I mean, we've heard about data a lot. We've spoken about data a lot. We've spoken about AI a lot. And at the end of the day, I pride myself on making data-led decisions, as I'm sure many of us in this room do. And at the end of the day, that's sort of what AI is too. It's just making data-led decisions. The better data you have, the better training you have, the better decisions it's going to make. So data really is the fundamental backbone of a lot of things that we're doing today, a lot of decisions we're making today. So I'm really excited to have two folks that honestly I couldn't have picked out better myself. We have Aziz Vahora from Poshmark, the Senior Director of Data Engineering, lives and reads data all day. And we've also got Rohit Nathany from Mejuri, the Chief Growth Officer, Digital Officer, which pick one. Yeah. But he has an interesting mandate where he works across engineering, product, and marketing, and looking at data in all of these different silos and also trying to look at them together, really. So to kick us off, folks, let's maybe start with something a little personal. Would love any stories about a data-led decision you've made in your personal lives or you should be making in your personal lives.
I mean, the example that I shared with Hastu was about my kids. Like, it should have been a data-led decision to have the second one. But outside of that, I would say the biggest change for me personally has been my health. Growing up in India, like we used to think about going to doctors as like when something is wrong. So after spending like few years in North America, right, like I never went for my annual. And once I did, like I saw a number and I'm like, I don't like this number. And once I tracking that number and I started just doing experiments, now I do like blood work twice a year, right? Like I have an Excel sheet like before all these startups came up where I'm tracking all these different biomarkers. Like I've been experimenting with like food and workout, like and all that good stuff. And it has really helped make a lot of difference in my energy level, like and everything else that I'm tracking here. So I think that will be a big one, I would say, at a personal level.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. A great example of usage of data in my life is actually for something that happened recently after we had a lot of talk. I was actually talking to my son, and he was actually doing a project around data. What's basically for his class is gathering data about the workout regime that he has and learning how many people are using what type of machines and do what type of exercises on them and how that benefits health. So data is so part of the normal life, and health was definitely one of the great ones that I also do quite a bit of. But
Okay, so the health apps are
health apps
definitely
are big.
picking up and on all of our phones. But
Correct.
moving to your day-to-day, the work that you do, Aziz, let's start with you. Why is clean data non-negotiable in any decisions you're making today?
Yeah, so clean data is definitely non-negotiable these days. I can give you an example. At Poshmark, we recently had to go through some really data cleanup exercise for our push notification related data that we had. One of the key things we realized is that because the data wasn't clean, our campaign effectiveness measurement wasn't right. And it turns out when we dig into it, that is just because of some expired tokens that were part of our campaign. After cleaning up these tokens, we were able to effectively deliver campaign, measure the success on the campaign. And not only that, our campaigns actually delivered faster. And so we had a better confidence in our data that we were receiving and strategies we were able to make on it. So yeah, clean data is definitely non-negotiable for us at Poshmark, and I think for anybody in marketing world.
Right. And I think in this example, you're almost saying as a channel itself, you had data that on the face of it looked right, but
It,
was a misleading
yeah,
number. And on cleanup, you realize that it's actually a channel that's
yeah.
performing really well for you.
It basically was almost like we thought that the push as the channel wasn't working, right, because of this bad data. And we just thought that, oh, people just don't engage in push anymore. And that's why we see that it's going down. But it's not really anything like that. It's actually just expired tokens that happen, through OS.
So you found out your most cost-effective channel is also one of the most effective
Yeah.
ones. So no.
Hopefully it will turn into that.
And Rohit, what about you? You, of course, work across different functions. It's not just clean data, but I think also data silos. I'm sure when you're looking at it, and then you have the added complexity of offline data.
Yes.
How do you look at all of this, and how do you make sure you have clean data for your decision making?
Yeah, I think just piggybacking on what Aziz mentioned, right? Like you want to make sure that like the decisions you're making are being made on like the sound data platform, right? Like if you don't have the clean data, if you don't have access to the right data set, like you just can't make the right decision. But that's just one piece. I think the second challenge that I often see over here is, right, like how do you connect the dots? To your point around like when you have data across different silos. And we have run into this at Mejuri multiple times, especially in the early days. And this is pretty common with like any company that's growing too fast, right? You hire too fast, like you have different teams, they're running at like full speed. And suddenly you have the concept of local maxima that starts to emerge, right? Like, and you start celebrating these siloed wins and you lose sight of what's the global maxima looks like. So we just started using a similar simple framework of is it driving incremental value for the company? And a simple example I can share in the early days were at Mejuri, if you're familiar with Mejuri, we launch products very frequently. We used to launch products like every week. And in the early days, right, like we would have, I would see a pattern, like you would come in, every department is talking about how they did with the new product launch. And there were instances where merchandising team will come and say, hey, we ended up beating our sell-through target. Or like, that's amazing. Marketing can say, hey, we were able to drive X number of traffic. That's great. But commercially, we are down that way. Like, how do you connect the dots over here? And what was really going on in those examples were just that like marketing was basically diverting the traffic from the best-selling pages to support this new product launch, which also just makes sense. But not all the product launches are the same, right? So it just led to a multiple set of tasks and follow-ups where now we have, now not all the product launches are the same. We have tier product launches where we decide how much we want to invest in it. And at the end of the day, it's like you have clean data, but now we are just connecting the dots across different functions so that we can maximize at a global level and not like at a local level.
Got it. And how do you also democratize that data across different teams? How do you get out of the silos that I'm sure the product team has its own set of tools, the marketing team's looking at their own set of tools. How today at Mejuri, with all of your complexity, are you bringing all of that data to a single view almost?
I mean, that will be my pipeline dream, I guess.
Okay.
Like that's a dream, right? Like you have a single dashboard, but in reality, you do not. Like I always use this example that I spent several years at Amazon, and we were used to like actually every single week going through like 30, 40 pages of just pure tables and metrics. And we would like pick any line item and someone would say, hey, explain this to me. That was the level of rigor we used to have. So I think I would love to have a dashboard, but what we have done at Mejuri that we have created like the KPIs that we need. We have the waterfall of all the KPIs by department at a commercial level. We have set a bunch of mechanisms using the concept of WBR, so weekly business reviews and monthly business review, where we double click on different aspects of the business, again, to make sure that like we are connecting the dots while everyone is running like full speed in their own unique ways.
So common and aligned KPIs just to make sure everyone's driving towards the same goals and being measured on similar
Yes,
outcomes.
having very clear
Cool.
understanding of the success criteria and the KPIs. So we have our North Star bar at a company level, then we have North Star at like the team level, like, and everyone in the company, you're not there yet, but like everyone in the company has a KPI that they are accountable for. And once you have that, and once you know how that ladders up to the topmost company level KPI,
Yeah.
you know you're on the right path. Then it's a matter of like creating mechanisms to make sure that like you don't steer away from that path.
And what about you, Aziz? You work very closely with your business
Uh,
counterparts.
Yeah, actually, to avoid the common mistakes that it leads to, one of the key thing is don't make the mistake of thinking that noise is the signal, right? Try to separate that out. And as part of that, one of the key things that Poshmark does is when a product is being thought of or when a feature is being thought of, Poshmark, as a team, we work together with the product team to define the data definition as part of the product itself and the KPIs that we are trying to, to target. So by data being part of the inception, it's not an afterthought. It helps us avoid some of those silos. On top of that, we marry that with our engagement data that we get, as well as some of our community feedback data that we get. At the end of the day, is making sure that everything that you're doing, right, does it serve the audience that you're trying to create this product for? And that's how we try to avoid that silo by keeping that bigger picture in mind.
Right. And any examples, Aziz, of where you were able to look at this data holistically, put it together, and make a decision, shift strategy in how you're executing maybe campaigns, merchandising, any of that sort?
Push campaign was one of the ones that we definitely had to do this. This is
Yeah.
actually why that whole campaign and that clean data thing came around, right? Like I said, we thought that the channel is dying,
Yeah.
right? And it's again, that was because we just looked at it in a silo of push and in that one context. But when we started to say no, right? People are engaging in other places. How are they coming here? When we realized that they're still coming from the push campaign, we were like, oh wait, why did this user come from here when it was supposed to be this message that we sent here?
Right.
And then we realized that, oh, it's because of just bad tracking and bad data that we have, right? So sometimes that's thinking back and looking from it a holistic perspective, you'll hopefully get to a right answer.
So you saw conflicting data
Yep,
signals,
exactly.
dove deeper, and found out it was just a matter of cleaning up the tokens,
Cleaning up.
having that. And what about you, Rohit? Any examples where you've shifted strategy based on data?
Yes, so many. I'll pick one, and it's an interesting one. I call this sort of problems like zombie problems. They just never go away in a way. They have a way to like come back to you at some point. If you guys are familiar with any brands, like you'll see it typically, right? Like homepage, you got the collection pages and you got the product details pages, right? And in the early days, we had a way to manual way of merchandising our collection pages. So you have merchandiser working with digital merchandising team saying, hey, this is how we want the products to look like on the grid, right? That's how we did it. But then we started testing some of the algorithmic ways to do those based on a certain KPIs and user behavior. We were looking for signals like what you're clicking, what you're buying, where you're coming from, and all that good stuff. And of course, like as we started getting into this more personalized ranking and customer journey behavior, not everyone was seeing the same thing, right? Like, so if you have some internal team members, they'll just launch a new product, they go to bestsellers, like, hey, I'm not seeing this product on the top. Or like, are you supposed to be seeing this product on the top, right? But in the end, right, like we ran a bunch of tests, right? Like I would say at least 20 tests in the last 2-3 years just to show how the algorithmic ranking is outperforming manual merchandising. But as a brand for Mejuri, it's just not about like letting a model run everything. We still have to think about like the product marketing. We still think about all the new products we are launching, all the icons that we are creating for the brand. So it also led to rethinking our collection pages. And now we have different types of collection pages. Some of them are very commercial in nature, and that's where we let the model do its job. And then there are certain pages which are designed with manual merchandising in mind. And it just does not end over there. Like our marketing strategy, our CRM strategy, all are designed to optimize for the customer behavior, for the for the commercial, as well as right like what we want to do as a brand. Where do we want to focus as a brand? So I think it just does not end up on the website, does not end on the funnel. It's like really end to end, and then you go back and apply that learning, and you continue to optimize through A/B tests.
Yeah, that is interesting because if you looked only at the data, it would have said most popular products every single time and not really leaving the space for the newer products. So, how do you make sure you don't over index on what the data is telling you? You put context, experience, and all of that in the right position. And I think, Aziz, you also spoke about where push would have, the data you were looking at, push would have led you down saying this is an ineffective channel. So, Rohit, are we starting with you?
Yeah, like I think any data point you look at, like you have to look at it within a certain context, right? Like, and the context is like, what are you trying to solve here? Well, like, what's the original problem statement? Once the original problem statement is clear, then you can bring that context to look at like, what does this data mean for us,
Right.
right? Like, I'll give you another simple example here. We had this like, I wouldn't say a firefight, but suddenly we were like, hey, what's happening on the conversion rate on the website? It's been trending on the lower side, more specifically for a particular channel traffic. I shouldn't be saying this. I was like, I'll let my team figure it out, but I kind of like knew where this is going. And what was happening was that like the digital team did not know that like the marketing team had changed their tactic, and they had played around with like some of the funnel strategies on this channel, and they figured out one particular new tactic which was giving us like better ROAS overall, but it came at the expense of lower conversion rate, right? And this is impacting this particular team's KPI. So again, like if they are just looking at this KPI, it's telling a very different story as if something is not working for this channel. But actually, we were maximizing at a global level. It is working at a company level. It is driving more traffic. But once you do that, like we are giving away something in conversion rate. So it was more about, again, like going back to, right, like having these two leaders like talk with each other, plan accordingly, make sure that like they don't go back to their silos. And that's the whole theme, right? Like clean data is the starting point, but then how do you break down these silos, especially in this fast growth phase, is key to success.
No, absolutely, Aziz.
No, I think Rohit covered it properly. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing is just look beyond that one place, right? Understand that this signal, is it telling you the right thing? And can you basically check or cross check with something else that actually helps, understand the full picture? Because otherwise, you're focused on that one signal, say, take email and say CTR is the only thing you're focused on. Yeah, you might achieve the CTR, but did you actually get something out of it? So to actually measure your ROI properly, right? So how do so try to look beyond and look at the bigger picture. And does it tell the story you were looking to tell initially, right?
Right. No, absolutely. So it's, again, I think the dangers of looking at data in a silo and not looking at it in the right context
Correct.
holistically. And with AI, obviously, being a big topic, AI changing the way that we're making decisions almost on an everyday basis, what role would you say humans and us as leaders and folks making the decisions have to play when you also have AI that is in a position to start making some decisions for you? How do you balance that, Aziz?
The thing with AI in context of marketing, if you think about it, AI is great at telling you who to target, when to target, what channel to target them on, right? But it does require a human to actually go and look at how should I target them or what should I target them with. For example, at Poshmark, AI might tell us that there's a chance of a customer churning and there's a segment of that customer. But it takes the marketing team to decide, do I send them the promotion or do I do a community push with them or does it actually require a product change, right? So if you can marry the speed and accuracy of AI with human empathy and context, then I think you would have a magical formula.
Yeah. And any any ideas, any tips on how do you build the right processes to make sure that happens? It's very easy to say AI is going to make this decision, let it do its thing. I feel like we are almost expecting at times for it to do it. So, any best practices, Aziz, you've seen?
Best, cleanest data possible you can feed AI, because I think somebody earlier one mentioned garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, yes, AI will get it for you, but it will work based on what you give it. So the context that you provide to it, the clean data, the identifiable data that you can provide to it is also a key to it, right? So if you have that figured out, then you use AI to actually create a feature. You can actually trust the output of it. And of course, verify and re-verify with a human so that way you know the output is right before you start to utilize it in automation.
Right. Absolutely. Rohit?
Yeah, where do I start? I mean, for me, the answer is actually very simple. And I always say, like, simple is stuff. It's all about what process you're trying to solve, like what problem you're trying to solve. And I often, whether it's Mejuri or in previous roles, like you go in and you're in a meeting, your people are scratching their head, and you just ask a simple question like, "Hey, why are we here?" And I'm surprised, like how often like people don't have a great answer to that, right? Like, and so when I think about like when I hear people saying that, hey, let's do AI, like what does that mean? I have friends calling me from companies and they're trying to retire and like, hey, I'm going to build an agent for you, like to do what, right? Like, so it's becoming so common, like, and I think we lose sight of like what problems we're trying to solve. If the problem statement is clear, the application of AI is simply a new technology, and we'll just figure out the answers will just appear in front of us. It's like how I think about this. So to give an example, a lot of time like I hear about like workflow automation. Now retool has been around for a while, and I would say Google Sheet and Excel can automate a bunch of processes today. So again, it's all about like going back to what problem we are trying to solve. If you have access to the clean data, at a personal level, like where I'm seeing a lot of value, like there are obvious use cases, like the where we have the generative aspect, ability to work with unstructured data, like, and if you look at customer experience, if you look at like code generation, code reviews, there the obvious use cases we are finding and unlocking a ton of value. In the end, right, like any time like a decision that's rule based, that's deterministic, that's very binary. I mean, I think AI should just do that job, right? Like it's very simple, very straightforward. In my mind, right, like it's a co-pilot for me right now. Like it should help me and it's helping me move faster, helping me think faster, iterate faster. Like I'm coding and I'm like back to like prototyping like over the weekend. It's just fun right now.
Vibe coding away.
The same.
Just vibe coding away.
Vibe coding is a bad term, right? Like it's actually
It's yeah,
fun coding right now, right?
it is fun coding more. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think again going back to like I know what problem I'm trying to solve, and I'm just asking Claude to code. Right. Very precise, very specific. It helps.
And for Mejuri, when you look at, say, the next 6 months or so, is there an AI-led use case that you're particularly excited about that you have in the works or?
I mean, as I mentioned, we are already going after the obvious ones.
Right.
The ones that I'm really interested in is more around the workflow automations. Is where I'm spending more time. But again, as I said, like those technologies have been around, but I think AI has just opened the eyes up around, right? Like, hey, we can really do this in an easier fashion now. So that's one piece. I think the second piece is more about, right, like just changing the workflows. I think like I'm more of an engineer turned marketer, right? Like, and I think about it really is going to change how the product managers and engineers going to work together, right? Like, and I think that's the part where I'm spending a lot of time. As I mentioned, like the reason I'm like vibe coding over the weekend is like it just gives you a better perspective on like what's possible now, and then bring that learning back to the engineering team, to the product management team, to help them kind of like think about how it's going to change their workflows.
Got it. So you're taking the fun you're having coding over the weekends and bringing it to work on a Monday.
Yes.
Very interesting. Aziz, how about you? Anything you're excited about in your
At
work?
Poshmark, we've been on the AI journey for past year or so now already, and we've already deployed a lot of cool features with like, image search or creating a new listing out of a single image called Smart List, right? Some of our personalization is actually powered by AI underneath to actually make sure that the right product is in front of the right, user at right time, right? And I think that investment is going to continue at Poshmark. And as a matter of fact, we're hiring, just FYI, if you are looking. But yeah, AI is definitely something. One of the key things we want to do is we want to make sure that we utilize AI in the place where we think that it will help our user do something better, easier, right? And get to that, sell faster or buy something faster. We always keep that context in mind when we're thinking about what is the next AI we want to work with, or what is the next thing we want to invent on.
Right. Got it. And when you're both looking at data and speaking to the audience here, do you have any advice? Do you have one good data habit that you'd recommend the brands in this room think about and actually take back home and put to practice? One or five for me.
One or five.
The data habit is like make data a habit, right? Like start your morning with looking at your dashboards, looking at your KPIs. Like I always preach this thing, like keep it as simple as possible, right? Like don't be reactive. And when you're looking at the data, when you're looking at the KPIs daily, if it's a ritual, you know where to look at, you know what questions to ask, you know where to go. It really saves a lot of time, and it just becomes like this intuitive thing, and it just adds up over time. Again, like this one of the things where I will see people, right, like kind of figure out how to answer these questions or take any new question from an exec as like a firefight. Like I'm like, no, the answer is right in front of you. Again, like they sometimes I see the struggle that they're not intuitively thinking along these lines, because again, data is not the habit, it's not the ritual. So whatever that dashboard is, whatever that KPIs, if you're spending time on this like every single day with your cup of coffee, it will add up over time.
Right. It's very interesting, Aziz.
Actually, it's very interestingly something I mentioned earlier. Make data part of the, you know, product that you're trying to create, right? Make sure that you're intentional about collecting and you know what you're collecting and why you're collecting it, so that it not only helps you understand your goal, but by integrating data earlier in the pipeline, right, you're being very intentional about how you're going to utilize the data, and where it will help you, in future. So it can be a little bit more, future thinking with it. So when you're defining that event, when you're defining that metrics, right, think about what's next and try to see, should I incorporate this now? If you can, do it. because that will save you more time when the next thing comes around than actually having to do it when that thing actually comes around.
Right.
Right.
And Aziz, any process you follow or any recommendations on how do you do that? That's a very difficult thing to do. Think about what data I might need, or the results I may want to track in the next few weeks or months from a campaign or any initiative you have.
A part of the strategy, part of the product generation, as you're talking about, okay, I want to create this feature, and that feature is about, let's say at Poshmark, let's say if I want to create a feature about giving some, suggestions around how you organize your closet, for example. And if I'm collecting data to understand so I can help the sellers understand how to organize their closet so they can make more sale, what's the next thing from there? Next thing from there is, how do we make sure that they can highlight a particular product, or how do we make sure that the closet that they have has the right information? Like, how do I lean into that next step from that first step that I just took, right? So if we keep the intention that overall at the end of the day they need to be selling more, that's the north star of this. And the step you just started with is, I'm going to expose some statistics about it. Okay, next thing is, how do I make the action on the statistic happen? And in order to make it happen, what data do I need to collect so that I know they're doing the right thing? If not, how do I go about it? You keep asking the next question until you reach that North Star.
Okay, so it's almost, don't just think about why you're doing this, but
Yeah,
you
think
may want to do
always that one extra step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rohit, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the culture, right? Like,
Yes.
spent several years at Amazon, then 3 different type of startups, and the difference I draw between those 2 different type of experiences is that, like at Amazon, like I just felt like it was part of the culture, right? Like you were just trained, no matter which meeting I go to, like you were just trained to think and ask questions in a certain way. Whereas like the next few roles were all in startup, like pre-IPO to IPO. Currently, the other part was M&A, right? Like so it's like it's a culture is in progress, right? Like we're still developing and nurturing it, like, and it's really important to go back to the culture because you won't know all the answers. There's no way.
Correct.
You need that support. You need the community around you to tell you, hey, have you thought about this? By the way, simple example, like at Amazon, like any new feature, any new product, I was trained to go and talk with my peers, like, hey, you don't know anything about this product, about this feature. Read this and tell me, like, what questions do you have? And I would return the favor, right? Like simple exercise like that would uncover like 5 or 10 new things for me, and I would go back and spend time on this. So again, like in my mind, it goes back to the culture. It's not going to happen overnight. It just takes a lot of time, needs to be company wide, and you focus on this, like creating mechanisms, WBRs, MBRs, whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right from the top, build that culture,
Build that
think
culture.
about data, think about that North Star that you want to get to.
100%, cannot agree more. You need every single person to be behaving in a certain way.
Right.
In this world of AI, I don't think data is a second thought anymore. I think it's more of the first thought, because in order to make that AI happen, you're going to have data. So,
Okay.
part of the culture would be the key, I guess. Yeah.
So, that means anyone and everyone thinking about AI, think about the data first, because it's literally only as good as
Literally, the only
data
thing
that-
AI needs is data.
Yeah. No, this has been amazing, Rohit, Aziz. Thank you both for the conversation. I think for me the biggest learning here is data is key. It's key to the decisions we're making, but context is king.
Yeah.
So data is great. Collecting the right data, collecting data that you need today, but also collecting data that you may need the next 10 steps towards that North Star, and just making sure that you're collecting it the right way in the right context. They're building that culture
Yes.
for it as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.